Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Champ Tech Talk. I'm your host Pusha Silva, and in today's episode, we will be diving into the field of project communications management. So stay tuned, and without any further ado, let's jump right in. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like and comment on this video. Now, before we get started, let's take a look at the topics that we will be covering during this session. First off, we will be taking a look at the importance of effective communications. Thereafter, we will also take a look at the different types of communications that are available for a given project. We will also go over the communication skills and different scenarios that may be applicable for a given project. We will also discuss on planning for communications management in a project, as well as managing project communications. And finally, monitoring project communications overall. So let's jump right in and get started. Communications, or more often effective communication, is defined as the ability to convey information to another party effectively and efficiently. What that means is it's not just simply the purpose of transmitting a certain message to another party, but rather than that, we also try to get the verification and to understand if they were able to completely comprehend the entirety of that message as per our perspective. Now, when it comes to projects, there are different roles and different stakeholders who are involved with a certain project. A stakeholder is a person who has invested their time and money, or maybe their interest in a different way for a given project. It can vary from internal stakeholders to external stakeholders, such as from managers, developers, analysts, quality assurance employees, to external stakeholders such as the banks, governments, suppliers, clients, end users, and so forth. As of such, there are a number of gaps that need to be addressed by effective communication. Let's take a certain scenario. For example, let's say two executives from two countries are having a negotiation for a given contract of a project. Executive A from country A and Executive B from country B. The first executive from country A is fluent in language A, whereas the second executive is not that fluent in the same language. Now, let's say, for example, that there is a clause in the contract that the first executive needs to be taken off due to their inability to meet that particular term of contract. It could be such as them having not having enough manpower, maybe. And as of such, Executive A will now request from Executive B to kindly remove that or maybe change that particular clause to a much more lenient term for them. However, the executive from country B may not fully comprehend this particular request, and he may simply say yes, saying that he has acknowledged that particular request, but this does not mean that he will actually take any steps to remove that or change that particular clause. It simply means that he has just understood the request. However, from the other perspective, the point of perspective from the first executive, he may take this yes as the second executive saying that he has agreed and understood to change this particular term of contract. Such as this is what we call as a cultural gap in communications. Due to the inability to confirm with a common language, there may be different issues that may arise in different projects such as this. Business managers with good verbal and non-verbal and written communication skills help facilitate the sharing of information between people within a company for its commercial benefit. On the other hand, it is also important for developers and quality assurance personnel to convey any updates or blocking items that they may be facing for their progress in the project. Now, when it comes to the gaps that will arise due to the expertise levels, this may be due to the different roles that are available in a given project by different stakeholders. So usually, ideally, a project manager and the business analyst is expected to have the highest communication levels for them to easily facilitate the communications that go on between the clients and the different stakeholders such as developers and the other teammates. However, that does not mean that the developers may simply not have any communication skills at all. It is also important for them to develop certain communication skills so that they can inform and maybe educate their fellow team members on any blocking items or newfound trends, alternatives, or other viewpoints that may simply go missed if they did not raise it. Because a project manager's perspective may be more focused towards the overall project, whereas a developer may have a better understanding of the underlying technical terms of that given project. Moving on to viewpoints and gaps addressed by effective communications. This refers to the different opinions, the priorities, and the requirements that may be given for a given project. In any project, depending on the scope and the client and the domain that it's available in, there may be different opinions and different requirements that come off from the client side, which need to be handled correctly by the relevant stakeholders. It's important that we do not miss any requirements, or we do not underestimate or misunderstand any opinions that come from the relevant stakeholders from the client side and translate in an incorrect way to our team members. Furthermore, it's important that we prioritize the important deliverables first and then move on to the less prioritized deliverables in the project lifecycle. Interests of different nature also arise when it comes to any given project. So it is important that via proper communication that these interests need to be properly cataloged and be handled by the relevant stakeholders to make sure that it's also communicated with all the parties involved in that particular project that this is the order that they will be addressed in. By doing so, it allows a project manager and the other stakeholders of that particular project to be aware of what is going on in that particular project lifecycle, and they are also aware that this is what is going to be coming first, and therefore both parties can properly plan ahead with the other activities for that relevant deliverable moving forward. There are different types of communications when it comes to the domain of communicating with another party. These are a few categorizations of such examples. The first one is between internal communications and external communications. Internal communications refer to the communications that happen inside a given project team or a company. These are mainly involved with the main internal stakeholders such as the project manager, developers, quality assurance personnel, the HR staff, and other relevant stakeholders that are included in a company. External communications, however, refers to the point where the given personnel will require to be communicating with other parties outside of the given internal scope. This may be with governments, banks, lawyers, the end users, and other clients who may be interested in the relevant project. Another type of categorization that we come across is formal communications and informal communications. Formal communications refers to more stringent methods such as emails, uh, sorry, such as meeting minutes, meeting agendas, contracts, terms of use, scope documentations, and other relevant documentations. Whereas informal communications may simply be such as a phone call, a video conferencing, a text message, or maybe even a subtlety of implying something. Vertical communications refer to the fact where, or the instance in scenario where a superior may give a certain task or allocate a certain task to his subordinate, or whereas the subordinate, after finishing a given task that is allocated to him, reports back to the superior. This is the communication that happens up and down the hierarchy of command in a given company, from the operational to the management to the strategic level, and vice versa. However, horizontal communication means the discussion of certain information and the sharing of other information between peers on a given level in the management. This could be over a discussion with other team members from different projects saying how their progress is going so far. Or it can be on a much more higher level where the board of directors may discuss on future benefits and future actions that they need to take for their company. Or maybe even on a middle managerial level where different managers get together and discuss on the best ways that they can move forward to achieve the company goals and objectives. Also, official communications refers to more formal communication channel, whereas we notify the relevant stakeholders that this will be the official communication channel, or maybe documentation that will be used throughout the project lifecycle. It could be something like the terms of contracts, the scope documentations, flow diagrams. It could also be such as meeting recordings and minutes, and so forth. Unofficial communications, however, refer to something which will not be able to be taken as a particular binding form of approval on any given communication remarks. Communication skills and scenarios. There are different types of formats of communications. Written communications often refer to the process of writing down something or recording something in a much more stringent form that would need to be read or maybe looked at upon. This can be taken in the form of such as emails, meeting minutes, agendas, and so forth. Oral communications refer to more vocabulary and other related means such as video conferencing, video calls, phone calls, instant messaging, and so forth. However, nonverbal communications is also another type of format of communications where this mainly depends on the body language of the person who is trying to communicate. It can be on a face-to-face interview, or it can be something more often like a video call, or maybe even something as simple such as saying hmm or yes while another person is speaking to say make sure that we are listening to that person and we acknowledge what they're saying. Another part of the different types of communication skill that we need to be look into is what we call as active listening. So active listening mainly comprises of the following concept, which is understanding in order to understand. In order for us to understand something that a particular person is saying, we first need to listen to what they are saying and then try to comprehend what that person has spoken to us. This can also be described by different subtleties in communications by, for example, say that if in a given meeting, a particular stakeholder is communicating something to the team, and you as a facilitator would need to be saying something like, yes, I understand, or yes, or to make sure that you acknowledge whatever is being said in that meeting and you understand that content. There may be underlying meanings that may go often surpass in these different meetings as well, which is why it's important to ask follow-up questions on anything that we are not sure upon. If a particular stakeholder raises a particular concept or maybe a a kind of an action that needs to be followed, and if you are not sure about what that is or if that will be the best fit way to go about that particular point, then it is important that we ask further questions and make sure that we clarify it with that relevant stakeholder, or maybe even provide alternatives to see what we can do about that. Inquiring and probing is much more similar to what we just discussed. So this refers to the verification of information that has been communicated in a given meeting. It is also the process of verifying the understanding of the information that was received by the relevant party. By doing so, we come across the different aspects that may be arising due to the communication of that particular new knowledge. Say, for example, there's a particular task that needs to be done in a certain way, and we communicate to the client saying that this is the way that we're going to be doing this particular task. However, at that point, another member of that particular meeting may have a different opinion and may provide a new alternative. By exploring that new alternative because of his inquiring and probing skills, we may come up with a much more efficient and effective solution to the same task that could be achieved with a much more cost-effective method and a time-effective method, which is why it is important for us to explore new alternatives whenever possible to make sure that we are able to keep our clients satisfied throughout the project life cycles and even beyond that. Educating your team members. It is an important part of communication when it comes to educating your team members. It is important that as a stakeholder, you convey new information to the team that is invested in your relevant project to make sure that they are best informed about what is happening with the task that is going on, as well as they have the relevant information what is needed from their end to continue with their task, and there are no blocking items for them to proceed. It is also important that we increase our own self-knowledge and awareness of the given project so that we may better address different issues and come up with new alternatives to address unknown issues in the future. Fact-finding tasks may also include such as R&D or else brainstorming sessions and so forth to come up with new alternatives and other means to address a particular task as we go down the project life cycle. Expectations management is another important part of communication skills when it comes to a project life cycle. It is important that we as stakeholders are able and capable of providing clear and concise goals to our end goals to our relevant teams. This may come from the client, which needs to be curated from a certain form and then addressed and translated back to the relevant development teams who are going to be taking part in the relevant project. Without clear goals and concise goals, no one will have a particular clear idea about what is happening in the project, and they may not be able to best address these different issues that may come in the future. If you do not allow them to understand what the exact goal of this project is going to be, they may take different approach and may somewhere down the line, they may end up somewhere totally different from what we were first expecting to end up at. That would be a huge time and cost decrease in efficiency for the client side as well as the company side as well. So it is important that we are capable of managing stakeholder expectations and separate those expectations between the parties and make sure that they are all agreed on the same page. For example, take this picture below. You can see that the client is expecting the delivery of a particular chair. However, if the relevant requirement is not expressed correctly to the relevant team who is going to be building the particular chair, they may just simply end up doing something else to what the client actually wanted in the first place. Going back to change this relevant requirement would be a huge task of which may incur huge costs as well as time for the both the client as well as the company. This is why it's important that we are communicating these expectations to not only the client but also the development teams. And if there is any conflict of opinions, we need to be addressing them immediately without making them or just postponing them further down the line. Persuasion is another important communication skill that is required by any team member or stakeholder that is invested in a given project. They need to be capable of inducing their team members to communicating the relevant requirements of the task and getting the relevant work done in the most effective manner possible. It is also important that you are capable of coaxing your stakeholders to make sure that their satisfaction is maintained throughout the project lifecycle. Because remember that the customer is the king and you need to make sure that they are happy no matter what happens throughout the project lifecycle. Enticing contribution and collaboration by not only from your team members but also from the client will allow you to discover new alternatives and other different opinions that may arise from that particular activity. By doing so, you get the best effective opinions and ideas that may have otherwise been ignored or dismissed in another meeting. When it comes to motivating and coaching, communication plays another important part in that particular aspect as well. It's important to improve the team morale and performance not only in the beginning of a project lifecycle, but throughout the entire project as well. Initially, all the members of the relevant project may be fully invested and they may be fully focused in that relevant project. But somewhere down the line, if it's a very long project, they may tend to lose focus and then their morale tend to drip down. In such an instance, it is important that the relevant stakeholders jump in and improve the team morale and performance to make sure that the company keeps achieving the relevant goals and objectives and also keeps the satisfaction of the clients at an optimum pace. This can be conveyed by valuing and communicating the different outcomes that may arise due to the achieving of the relevant goals and objectives of the relevant project. If the team is aware of what the end goals and objectives and what the outcomes of a relevant project will be, they will be more motivated towards achieving that relevant goal in the first place. Negotiations. Negotiations play a key part in communication skills and management as well. It is important that we are capable of understanding the key stakeholder needs and requirements that come across from the clients. And it's important that we are also aware of the capability of our own internal team as well. Understanding both these concepts and then combining them and arriving at a middle ground is what we need to do in negotiations. We need to make sure that we are achieving the customer satisfaction and the customer is happy with what we agree to deliver on. And we also need to make sure that we are capable of delivering the relevant agreed upon terms of contract for the relevant project. By satisfying this scope, we are capable of maintaining a high customer intern while keeping the best efficiency for the relevant project team as well. Conflict resolution is another part which plays an important part in communication skills and scenarios. Conflict resolution refers to the process where you prevent the different challenges that may arise during different parts or phases in your project lifecycle. An important part of this particular point is active listening. Actively listening to the problems that the relevant stakeholders may communicate to you or the other stakeholders of the relevant project will allow you to best approach the relevant problem and try to come up with a solution for that relevant problem. By actively listening, we are capable of getting all the viewpoints of different stakeholders, their opinions, their views, and other ideas that they may have on how we can resolve this particular issue that may be arising now or maybe on a given date in the future. And then by discussing on those particular points, we may come up with a solution that will allow us to best forego that particular risk in the future or solve an issue that has been bothering us in the first place. We also need to be able of persuading parties to make sure that due to that we don't lose any clients or anything of the sort that may arise due to different conflicts. This may be done by coming to a common page, common middle ground via negotiations with both parties on a common meeting. We may need to communicate to the client saying that this is an issue for us at the moment. However, we are capable of delivering this in a month or so, and we need to get their approval if that is okay with their side as well. By doing so, we allow the client to engage with us, and we are asking them to collaborate with us, and they feel part of this project as well, which will enable us to maintain a good relationship with all the members in the relevant team. Summarizing and road mapping refers to the relevant project stakeholders conveying whatever work that was done to the end clients and the relevant stakeholders. By doing so, everyone is aware of what is going on in the project lifecycle, and there are no miscommunications on what has to be delivered or else even what was delivered in the first place. Presenting the current status may occur via a conference call, a meeting on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, depending on the scope of the project and the stakeholders and the domain that it is working with. Discussing next step is also an important part of this run process, whereas it is important to map out the future to make sure that we avoid as many risks as possible in the future down the line of that relevant project's life cycle. Planning ahead is a very key important point like I mentioned earlier, because by doing so, we are capable of addressing different issues that may arise due to certain negligence or maybe drawbacks of our internal team as well. Communication needs may vary by different aspects as well. It can vary due to the scope of the project or the domain that it is currently working in. It can depend on the phase that it is being currently developed in. It can vary by the activity or maybe even by the stakeholder who is contributing to this relevant project. If you do not have proper planning sessions, there may be a certain number of repercussions that may occur due to that. One of those could be the delayed message delivery. If we don't have our proper planning communications done in the first place, the communication of certain messages may be reaching the client at a much later time than what is requested by them in the first place. By doing so, they may have higher interns on cost and time which they have otherwise invested in marketing the relevant product or maybe other aspects as well. There may be instances where they deliver, where we may need to deliver, where we may have delivered the wrong message to the wrong audience. By doing so, there may be a critical impact to the project, whereas the minimum thing would be that the message goes or it just goes ignored, or whereas we pass on certain critical information to the general public and someone may use that particular information, particularly maybe their computation of the relevant client, and they will try to use that information against the said client in the first place. This may incur huge backlash of cost and time and legal matters that will go forward down the road as well. There are certain violations that may be in violation of certain compliances laws such as HIPAA, GDPR, and also ISO standards, which are in place to make sure that these sort of miscommunications do not happen in the relevant project life cycles. Incorrect communication refers to the process where the one party is incorrectly saying that we have delivered this particular icon or this particular task to the relevant client, whereas it was actually not being done in that particular instance. By doing so, the client may be expecting something to work, whereas it's not just working because it simply wasn't delivered at that particular point in time. There may be also issues that may arise by not providing enough information to the end client, whereas the client or the user may not properly know what to do with that relevant piece of information that they receive, and they may need further follow-up calls and other discussions to properly figure out what was meant in the first place. This may cause time backlashes to the relevant project teams on both fronts as well. There can also be instances where the context may be misunderstood by both parties, and therefore it may be that the client may tend to go on a certain path, whereas the project team will go on a certain path, and they will start diverging on the relevant goal that was intended in the first place. When we take the standard communication models over depicted as follows, the first part of the communication model is encoding. Encoding refers to the process of writing down or making sure that we get the message properly structured by the relevant communicator. He will then transmit that message to the end party, whereas once the end party has received the message, he will need to decode that particular message and acknowledge that he has received the message that was sent across by him as well. However, it is important to note here that acknowledgement does not mean that he has agreed or understood the content of that message. It simply means that he has just received the message. The acknowledgement or the confirmation of the content in the message can be discussed via the feedback or the response that will be sent across from the second party back to the first party. And so forth, this cycle will continue as needed as many times as possible. When it comes to communication methods and technologies, there are different communication channels and different ways in people communicate as well. Interactive communications are mostly for multi-directional audiences which consist of more than two or more stakeholders. Examples of this can be such as meetings, calls, conference calls, instant messaging, and video chats. Push communications tend to focus more on specific key stakeholders than general stakeholders as well. In the previous example, examples for push communications may be via letters, emails, voicemails, or fax messages, which target a specific key stakeholder or one particular person in general. The third type of communication method that is available is what we know as pull communications. So these types of communications are best suited for large audiences or a large set of information distribution methods. Examples of this could be intranets, e-learning websites, databases, and other different repositories where a particular stakeholder can access that particular platform and gather the information that is required for their purpose. When coming into terms with managing and monitoring communications, the idea is a broad concept which can be summarized by the picture over here. This means the process of ensuring that the right content reaches the right audience via the right channel at the right time. Ensuring the right content refers to make sure that we give the correct information and we do not miscommunicate anything, or we do not give them any incorrect information to the end client. Reaches the right audience refers to the fact that we are communicating properly to the relevant stakeholder only, and we are not communicating that relevant content to any other parties who need not know that particular information. The right channel can be determined by using various technologies depending on the security of the channel, the sensitivity of the information, and other aspects that is coming into play at that particular requirement level. At the right time means that we communicate all this relevant communication information aspects and points to the relevant audience at the right time and not before or after the relevant point in time. By communicating effectively in such a manner throughout the project life cycle, we are able to make sure that we achieve our goals in the best way possible, and also make sure that we are able to maintain the customer satisfaction at an optimum level. So let's take a look back on what we have learned so far in this session. Today, we looked at the importance of effective communications and also the different gaps that may arise from ineffective communications. We looked at the different types of communications that are available in a given project, such as formal, informal, verbal and nonverbal, and other official and unofficial communication types, as well as many more. We looked at different communication skills and scenarios such as active listening, negotiation skills, conflict management, expectations management, and many more as well. We then looked at how we can plan for communications management, and also we looked at the results that may arise due to improper planning of this relevant communications in a given project. We also looked at how we can manage and monitor the project communications as we go down the line in a relevant given project communication channel. So I hope this particular session was informative to you all as well. If you do have any questions, feel free to comment below on this video. Hope you have a good day and thank you for watching.